The animal kingdom boasts a wide variety of options and challenges for players in the wide, wild world of Pathfinder. But if you're willing to dive into the green, you'll unearth a bounty of fearsome monsters, useful items, and powerful class features in the Plant Kingdom. This guide is broken into two parts. In this first video, I'll be exploring plants as creatures and as hazards. Then, in part 2, I'll break down plant items, class features, and races, so players can get in on the botanical fun. With that out of the way, let's look at plants as a creature type. Plant creatures have D8 hit die. They have a 3/4 base attack bonus, so medium progression. They have good fort saves. They have skill points equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier. And perception and stealth are class skills for plant creatures. Unless otherwise noted, plants have the following traits: low light vision, immunity to all mind effects, immunity to paralysis, poison, polymorph, and sleep. Plants are proficient with its natural weapons. Plants do not have armor proficiency. Finally, plants eat and breathe, but they do not sleep. Now that you understand the overall concept of what a plant creature is, let's look at some iconic examples of plant creatures from the bestiary. Beginning with one of the most recognizable, the treant. Not to be confused with the race of treemen from Middle-earth. Treants are huge category, neutral good plants. They have DR 10, bypassed by slashing, and vulnerability to fire. Treants have 15-foot reach in melee. They have the rock throw special attack. This does 2d6 plus 13 points of damage. One of their most terrifying abilities is animate trees, because every player's gangster until the forest starts walking. A treant can animate and control up to 2 trees. It takes a full round action for the trees to uproot themselves. Trees animated in this way move at 10 feet and gain a slam attack with the same base attack bonus as the treant. It also has the same damage profile. Finally, the animated trees gain fire vulnerability. Another special ability of treants is double damage against objects. When making a full attack against an object or structure, a treant or animated tree deals double damage. Treants have tree speech. This ability allows them to converse with plants as if they were under a constant speak with plants effect. Most plants are friendly or helpful. When a treant is in the forest, it gains a plus 14 to its stealth checks. This is because treants tend to resemble the trees in the forest that they're native to. Finally, treants are intelligent and wise, and though they're mostly solitary, they're willing to tolerate others, especially if they're willing to learn from their long, rambling speeches, and help protect the woodland realm. The next creature we'll look at is the assassin vine. This is a large category true neutral plant. Assassin vines have low light vision and blind sense out to 30 feet. They are immune to electricity and have resistance 10 to fire and cold. Assassin vines have a 5-foot move speed and 10-foot reach. Assassin vines have a slam attack with a plus 7 bonus. They deal 1d8 plus 7 points of damage and grab. They have a plus 13 to maintain their grab. Assassin vines also have a constrict ability. This deals 1d8 plus 7 damage. Next, assassin vines have camouflage. A DC 20 perception check is required to notice an assassin vine before it attacks. It's also possible to substitute either knowledge nature or survival for this check. Assassin vines also have an ability called entangle. As a free action, the vine can animate plants within 30 feet, giving any creatures near it the entangled condition. An entangled creature can't charge or run, and it takes a -2 to attack and a -4 to dexterity when casting a spell while entangled. There is a spell fail chance. The DC to overcome this fail chance is a DC 15 plus spell level. Behavior-wise, assassin vines tend to wait amongst other plants in jungles and forests for prey to wander by. Assassin vines are mainly found in forests and jungles, but they could possibly appear in poorly tended farms, vineyards, and even flower beds and greenhouses, when their seeds are dropped by birds. Finally, an interesting trivia note. Assassin vines produce a fruit similar to blackberries. The sweetest berries come from the most deadly plants. And assassin vine berry wine would be a great drink for any villain. Next up, let's look at the murderous cousin of the Leshy, Mandragora. They are small plants of chaotic evil alignment. They have resistance 10 to electricity and resistance 5 to cold and acid. Mandragora have a 40-foot movement speed, a 40-foot climb speed, and a 10-foot burrow speed. Mandragora can bite with a +8 bonus to hit. They deal 1d6 damage +2 and grab. They also have 2 slam attacks with a +8. These slam attacks deal 1d4 +2 damage and poison. Their poison does 1d2 con damage, requiring a fortitude save of DC 15. A Mandragora's most iconic ability has to be Shriek. 1 time per day, all creatures within 30 feet of the Mandragora must make a DC 15 will save or be nauseated for 1d4 rounds. Nauseated creatures can't attack, cast spells, or take any action other than a single move. Mandragora get a whopping +22 to stealth when in vegetation. And they have a very interesting weakness. They have vulnerability to supernatural darkness. When in areas of supernatural darkness, such as the Deeper Darkness spell, mandrakes are slowed as if under the effects of the slow spell. Now, let's move on to the Shambling Mound. Shambling Mounds are large plants of true neutral alignment. Shambling Mounds are immune to electricity and have fire resistance 10. A Shambling Mound has 2 slam attacks at +11 to hit. Said attacks do 2d6 damage +5 and grab. Shambling Mounds have a +16 to their grapple and can constrict for 2d6 +7. Shambling Mounds get a +12 to stealth checks when in swamps or forests. Another interesting ability possessed by the Shambling Mound is Electric Fortitude. Any electric attack used on a Shambling Mound increases its Constitution score by 1d4 points. It loses these temporary points at a rate of 1 per hour. Another important note. Shambling Mounds are surprisingly intelligent, with an int score of 7. This puts them on the same level as trolls and ogres. They understand Common and Sylvan, but cannot speak. Finally, one of the most interesting things about Shambling Mounds. Rumor holds that Shambling Mounds will gather in strange conglomerations around great earthen mounds deep in marshes and jungles during violent electric storms. This is potentially a very interesting encounter for any players wandering through the woods. The final plant creature I would like to spotlight is the Jimenju, or the human-faced fruit tree. This is a huge plant of true neutral alignment. It is immune to poison and possesses blind sense out to 60 feet. A Jimenju has a 15-foot range on its bite and a +15 to hit. The bite deals 2d6 +8 damage. It also has 2 slam attacks with a +16 to hit that deal 1d8 +8 damage. A Jimenju has spell-like abilities. It can cast Share Memory at will, and 3 times per day it can cast either Sculpt Sound or Shout. A special ability possessed by the Jimenju is Enticing Head Fruit. Any creature that begins its turn within 5 feet of the Jimenju must make a DC 22 will save, or be compelled to eat the tree's fruit. If a creature makes this save, it is immune to this effect for 24 hours. As you might guess, the head fruit is poisonous. Requiring a DC 22 fort save, the poison deals 1d3 wisdom damage and confusion for 1 round. A Jiminju can also produce intoxicating stench. 1 time per day, all creatures within 60 feet of the Jiminju must make a DC 22 will save, or be compelled to approach the tree. They must approach the tree via the most direct route. If that path is dangerous, or the tree attacks, the victim gets a new save to this effect. This effect lasts for 6 rounds. Another ability they possess is Unsettling Drone. All creatures within 30 feet must make a DC 18 will save, or be shaken. Successfully saving against this effect grants immunity for 24 hours. Finally, Jiminju possess an intelligence score of 7, and they may be willing to share the memories they've collected in exchange for food. Just be careful if you're dealing with one of these things that you don't become the food. Now that we've looked at plants as creatures, let's discuss plants as hazards. Beginning with a deadly cave denizen, the violet fungus. This is kind of a wobbler that straddles the line between creature and hazard. A violet fungus is a medium plant of true neutral alignment. It has a move speed of 10 feet, but it prefers to stay in one place if it has decaying matter to feed on. It is a fungus after all. Violet fungus have a 10-foot reach with their tentacles. They have 4 tentacle attacks at +4 to hit. This attack deals 1d4 plus 1 damage and rot. Rot deals 1d4 strength damage and 1d4 constitution damage. This is a poison effect. A DC 15 fortitude save negates rot. An interesting plant hazard, possibly related to the Jiminju, is the corpse fruit tree. Corpse fruit trees grow from the ground where an intelligent creature is buried. The tree is under an illusion effect that makes its rotten, disgusting fruit appear ripe and edible. It requires a DC 15 will save to disbelieve this effect. If you consume the corpse tree's fruit, the next time you rest, you will be affected by the nightmare spell. DC 17 will save to negate. This effect lasts for 3 days, or until saved against. Finally, if the body resting below the corpse fruit tree has become an incorporeal undead, you would take a -2 penalty on saves against its spells and spell-like abilities. Now onto the beautiful but deadly vampire orchids. A character traveling through a cluster of vampire orchids must make a DC 15 reflex save or a DC 20 acrobatics check. If this check is failed, the orchids release a cloud of pollen. The character must then make a DC 15 fortitude save or fall asleep. This sleep effect lasts for 1 minute. Sleeping helpless creatures take 1d4 points of damage per round that they're in contact with the vampire orchids. This is 10d4 of damage. The final plant hazard I would like to look at is the gnarled tree. A DC 17 perception check to notice a gnarled tree in the forest. A gnarled tree can attack as if it were a treant. It has 2 slam attacks at +7, dealing 2d6 plus 13 damage. It fortunately cannot throw rocks or animate trees, and it's vulnerable to fire. Now, when all living creatures move more than 30 feet away from the gnarled tree, it returns to dormancy until more targets move in range. Alright, now let's move on to plants and loot. Plants don't care about loot or treasure. If you're planning an encounter with plants as an enemy type, if there's loot there at all, it will be either because it belonged to a previous victim, or they might have been placed there deliberately to guard it. Plants can have a variety of treasure types associated with them. Type A, coins. Type B, coins and gems. Type D, coins and small objects. These are things like scrolls, potions, and wands. Finally, Type E, armor and weapons, probably with bones in them. Finally, you might consider that some parts of the plant might be valuable in and of themselves. Also, when you're planning an encounter involving plants, remember, plants are stealthy. Particularly when in their native environment, plants have very high stealth scores, and they blend into the terrain, quite literally. They're a great way to surprise players. And even outside of natural terrain, such as in cities, sewers, gardens, and even places like farms, a well-placed plant encounter will be very surprising. Finally, I'd like to leave you with some inspiration from other media to cultivate your thinking about plants in Pathfinder. Obviously, one of the most iconic plant creatures are the Ents from Lord of the Rings. But they're not the only plant denizens of Middle-earth. Also, consider looking at the feral Huorns, who accompany the Ents into the Battle of Isengard. Also, don't forget about the enigmatic Old Man Willow, who nearly dooms Frodo and friends in the Fellowship of the Ring. Also, the Green Man from the first book of the Wheel of Time would make for a much more verdant version of a treant. There are also the Deku Scrubs from the Legend of Zelda series, the Spriggans from the Elder Scrolls series, like Oblivion and Skyrim, and their horrible bees. Magic the Gathering has a lot of fantastic plant creatures, like the Lumberknot and the fungus-like Thalids. You can find some great examples of dark fantasy plant creatures in the Dark Souls series, like the curse-rotted Greatwood. Finally, if you're looking for something a bit odd and cosmic, remember that even though they look like giant bugs, the Migo from the dread planet Yawgoth are actually plants. Thank you for watching the Pathfinder 1E Guide to Plants, Part 1. Be sure and come back next time for Part 2. And if you're in the market for Pathfinder 1E books or resources, check out Noble Knight Games by following the link in the description. Also, if you're interested in supporting my work outside of YouTube, check out Sorcerous, a dark fantasy mystery RPG available right now on Steam. Follow the link in the description to watch the trailer.